Greetings to all my friends joining us today. I sure miss being with you in beautiful Cameroon, Africa in miniature. But I'm honored that you have joined me, as well as all the great speakers who have poured their very lives into ours today. I especially want to thank Dr. Gaffison for giving myself, as well as all of you, this tremendous opportunity to grow and to pursue greatness in our lives. Well, we've listened, we've learned, we've laughed. Hopefully, our lives have been transformed by the things we've experienced today. But it's just the beginning of a journey. It's a lifelong process with the ultimate goal of true significance. True greatness is more than success. It's realized in living a meaningful, useful life, one that's made a difference in, left a mark on, and added value to others. The greatest way to understand the difference between success and significance is that success is when I'm just adding value to myself, but significance is when I'm adding value to others. And there's nothing wrong with success. In fact, I've learned I can actually increase my significance. If your answer to the question, why am I doing this, is because you want to make a difference in the lives of others. It's the why behind the what. It's the motive for everything we do. Success is about me. Significance is all about others. Significance is a shift of focus from myself to others. Let me put it this way. When you're old or older, when you no longer have to answer to anyone or meet their expectations, I say when you're nearing the end of your life and you're looking back, what will you have done with your life? What will your life have meant? What difference will you have made while you journeyed this planet called Earth? I promise you this, it will matter to you then, if it's not already on your mind right now. And the answer will determine whether you'll be filled with gratitude or regret. The answer will be important to us on that day, so I say the question should be important to us on this day. Significance is the only way to really live a life of true greatness. Significance is about living a life of meaning, and because it's rare and extraordinary, it's more difficult to measure than success. How do you determine the impact of a person's life? Do you base it on the quality of one life that's been touched or on the quantity of lives that's been influenced? And what time do you try to make the measurement? By the time you're 40 or 65 or 90? Or how long after a person's gone do you judge the impact of their life? 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years? Or will it only be known in eternity? Let me give you an example that will illustrate this fact. When I was 29 years of age, I was leading a small church, and we had a child care facility to help parents who couldn't afford child care while they worked. One afternoon, as I was meeting with the director, a mother came to pick up her 5-year-old daughter. I heard the little girl crying, and I heard the mother explaining that she would have to cut this little girl's long, beautiful hair. So I asked, what's the problem? Well, I discovered that another little boy had tangled this little girl's hair in the wheels of a wind-up toy car. The mother was in a hurry to get to the local grocery store before it closed, and she didn't have time to try and untangle it. So I asked the mother, will you just go to the grocery store and then come back and pick up your little girl? And the mother agreed. So while the director watched, I sat on the floor with this little girl, and for the next 30 to 45 minutes, I was able to untangle every strand of her hair from that little toy. Well, I left the little girl happy with the director, and I went home. A week later, that lady, that little girl and her 2 siblings came to our church. They immediately started volunteering in our programs. The mother's husband joined her, and over the next 31 years, they, their spouses, and their children have volunteered and even became leaders in the various organizations that I've led. They've led programs that fed children who were underprivileged or impoverished. They've helped build schools and churches and medical clinics in the Amazon jungles. And they even helped build and open 2 different orphanages. One was in Haiti and the other in Ecuador. Do you know that whole family are still leaders in those organizations today? And that little girl and her husband have 5 young boys. and they're raising them to live their life for others. Now, there's no way I could have known the significance of that simple act. And only time could reveal the difference that that moment would make. You see, true greatness, true significance to me is more than the here and now. It's about time and eternity, about life and death. A significant life is about being applauded by men, but being approved by God. I'm a person of faith. I'm a follower of the principles of Jesus. But no matter your religious view of the man Jesus, the fact of his significance is undeniable. His public life only lasted a little over 3 years, and he never wrote a book or even wrote anything down. And yet there are more books written about Jesus than any other person in the history of mankind. Jesus never composed a song, but there's more music been written about him than any single subject, bar none, in history. Jesus never painted a picture or sculpted anything, but more art has been made about him than any other single personality in all the world and for all time. And as a person, Jesus never traveled more than 200 miles from where he was born, and when he died, he only had a few hundred followers. Yet 2,000 years later, he has over 2 billion followers, and you can find his followers in every small and remote part of the world. When it comes to greatness, here's what Jesus taught. Greatness is realized in living a life of serving others. Now, serving others goes against human nature. At best, we humans are selfish, extremely self-centered. And if you don't believe it, just watch a bunch of children playing together. No one has to teach them to be selfish. Significance is literally about putting others first, helping others get what they need and what they want, serving others, sometimes at our own expense. It's about encouraging others, even choosing not to point out their weaknesses, but intentionally choosing to celebrate their strengths. It's about slowing down in life and looking around and looking for ways to invest in the lives of others. Significance is all about others. Well, my drive for success is actually motivated by my desire to have more influence with and more impact on other people. And there's something about the feeling of doing something significant for others. It's something that mere success can never bring. And once you've tasted significance, success will never be enough again. Success, no matter how great it is, leaves a vacuum, a longing, an empty aching inside that says, there has to be more to life. Significance is that more. You see, I had to decide to be intentional and make it a daily discipline, and you will too. And it doesn't have to be big things. The big things are great, but they don't happen every day. And I have found that if I wait for the big things, I tend to lose my perspective. And when you lose your perspective, your motives begin to drift back towards success. It becomes about me again instead of about others. You see, selfishness is the enemy of significance. The opposite happens when I keep my perspective and make it a daily discipline. After all, true significance doesn't happen in a day, but it happens daily. Significance is not an event. It doesn't take place immediately, but it will happen eventually if you intentionally make it a daily choice. So in order to keep my motives pure and my perspective correct, I live according to what many call the golden rule. It's another principle Jesus taught. And though you may not be a person of faith, you've probably heard the saying, what goes around comes around. The principle Jesus taught says this: whatever you want others to do for you, you go first, take the initiative, and do it for them. This is something I can do daily that simply keeps me from living for myself. You see, I dislike washing my hands at a dirty lavatory, especially in a public toilet. So I decided if I dislike that and I would like someone to wipe down the counter and the sink and the faucets for me, then I should do it for others every time I use them, to ensure that others who follow me will not have to wash at a dirty sink. No one is ever really going to know about it. And it may not seem significant to you, but two very important things happen within me when I do it. First, I conquer selfishness. And secondly, I have a deep sense of fulfillment that ultimately I've made a difference for someone else. It takes time to live for significance. It becomes the motive behind every meeting, every meal, every relationship, and every event. I rise early every morning thinking about my day. Who am I going to see? Who can I call or text? What can I do to make a difference in their life? Then I think of creative ways to impact their lives. And I always start with my family. In fact, every day I either text, voice text, or call both my children, who are both grown and live on their own. And I do it every day to tell them two things. First, that I love them. And second, of something about them I am proud of. Around 2003, my pursuit of significance led me to begin to think about each one of my family members individually every Christmas. My family loves Christmas time. It has become one of my greatest opportunities for significance, and it takes me months of preparation. I think about each family member, and then I buy a small figurine, $2 or $3 US at most, that is a symbol of something significant about their life, their character, their attitude, a talent, and the potential that I see in them. And then I write a letter to them explaining how I see them and what a great quality they have, and how this symbol, this figurine, portrays that about their life. Everyone looks forward to this time, and it always happens at the end of the night on Christmas Eve. I personally read each letter out loud to each family member in front of all the others. By the end of the night, we're all crying, and they keep those letters and gifts and display them in their homes to remind them of that moment all year long. Listen to me. It is a transformational moment in our relationships every year. You see, it's the little things compounded daily that eventually result in big things happening. Again, one of the principles Jesus taught is that if we are faithful with the little responsibilities, it prepares us for and proves that we're ready for bigger responsibilities and opportunities. Let me give you a personal example of this. About 11 years ago, I was going to speak to a group of people that were collectively facing a tough season in their organization. Poor integrity issues had brought about a major transition of leadership, and I knew they needed to be encouraged. By the way, encouraging people is one of the greatest ways to pursue significance. And it's not hard knowing who needs to be encouraged. If somebody is breathing, they need encouragement. In fact, every one of us do all the time. Well, that day as I spoke to this group, I decided I would label them with encouraging words. I had a small notepad of name tags, and I would write something uplifting and hand it to the person I was talking to. There was a young man there that day. I had never met him. I knew nothing about him. But later I discovered that he was from another country and was here in the U.S. studying for his doctor's degree. Well, as I looked at him, I wrote on that label, Father of Nations, and I handed it to him. What I didn't know was that those words were a great affirmation of things he had felt was his very purpose in life. It so touched his life and impacted him that he decided that day he would one day do something significant for me. Well, as they say in my country, the rest is history. That young man was Madison Gaffison. And that simple act 11 years ago is the very reason I'm standing here before you today. I'm given this honor and privilege now to encourage you to pursue true significance. Now understand this. My motive wasn't to get this opportunity. It wasn't even available back then. My motive was not success. It was significance. And it is this pursuit of significance that has now led me to 46 different nations of the world. I've spoken to 25,000 people in Surabaya, Indonesia, and to one single family in a hut in the Amazon jungles. I've taught orphans in Indonesia on how to live for others. I've helped build churches and schools and medical clinics and taught these principles all over the world. It's taken me from Kiev, Ukraine to Madras, India, from Madrid, Spain to Quito, Ecuador. I've taken groups of young men and women to Kosovo and Mexico to teach them that living for others is true significance. I endured the tsunami in Thailand and the earthquake in Pakistan because I wanted to make a difference in the lives of others. I've eaten foods I couldn't pronounce and I didn't want to know what it was. And I've slept in places where I refused to close my eyes until morning because I wanted to impact the lives of others. This pursuit has put me before prime ministers and presidents, for widows and orphans, and I feel I've only just begun. Pursuit is an action. It takes action and determination. You have to be creative, always thinking of ways to add value to people. And in order to add value to people, Dr. John Maxwell says you first have to value people, all people. It's called respect, and everyone is worthy of respect. It's not a matter of their conduct, but of our character. He says humans are human. They make mistakes. They do wrong things. They say hurtful things. They can treat us in ways that are unlovely. Love them anyway. I say unconditionally love people. How do I do it? I put myself in their shoes. Nothing helps me love people more than looking at myself. See, I've done some dumb things in my 60 years. I've hurt people and said hurtful things. And when I do, I want other people to love me unconditionally, overlook it, extend me grace, and forgive me. I want people to judge me on my best moments, not my worst. Dr. Maxwell says we're not as good as our best moments, and we're not as bad as our worst moments. So, I'm going to value people based on their best moments, forgive them for their worst moments, and love them unconditionally in all their moments. After all, if that's what I want people to do for me, it's only right I do it for others, even strangers. This kind of pursuit requires a shift from putting yourself first to putting others first. True significance can't be motivated by a need for attention or recognition. It has to be based on making a lasting difference in the lives of others. One way to value people is to believe in people. Most people don't have anyone who believes in them. Most have no one who values them. So they underestimate themselves and they put down their self-worth. You see, believing in me is exactly what my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Hall, did. As I was going into the fourth year of elementary education, my family moved to a new city, which meant going to a new school. I was very intimidated about being the new kid. I had no friends, and I started making friends with troublemakers. Every time Mrs. Hall would intervene and direct me in a different direction. She encouraged me to learn music. She helped me learn to speak in public. She even put me on a platform to perform in front of about 300 people when I was only 10 years of age. She would always tell me, Frankie, God has a great plan for your life. And she'd say, one day you're going to do great things. Why, she was one of the driving forces behind me wanting to pursue my life calling of speaking publicly. Mrs. Hall never taught me again after that year. In fact, 2 years later, my family moved again to a city far away. Yet all my life, I thought about the impact Mrs. Hall had on me. When I was 37 years old, 27 years later, I reached some good success in my career and my ministry. I led an organization. I had started training and pastoring pastors all over the world. I was pastoring a local church of about 600 people in a small town of only 5,000 people. We had built 2 new buildings to house the growth and the ministries we had started for children and for youth. I realized one day I need to contact Mrs. Hall and thank her by telling her the impact she had on my life and what I had accomplished. Well, it took me a while to find her. It had been 27 years. And this was before internet and social media and technology as we know it today. Took me a lot of hard work, but I finally reached her by phone. I told her that day, Mrs. Hall, you probably don't remember me, but my name is Frankie Powell. Suddenly she said, oh yes, I do, Frankie Powell. I know all about you and your success. She then proceeded to tell me everything about myself that I had wanted to tell her. By this time, I'm crying on the phone. I start telling her how she impacted my life that year she taught me. Then she said this. She said, let me tell you the other side of the story. That was the only year I ever taught academics. I taught music for 30 years and never wanted to teach anything else. But that year, our principal said they didn't have a teacher for that class. They couldn't afford to hire one, and that I would have to teach both music and academics that year. This is what she told me. She said, I went home, I was distraught when I told my husband. Then she told her husband, I've got to get out of my comfort zone. And if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to find one student to pour my life into this year and make a difference in theirs. Then she said this, after the first week of school, I went home and told my husband I have found that student, and his name is Frankie Powell. After that, we stayed in touch over the next 20 years before she passed away. But you see, Mrs. Hall valued me by believing in me, by investing in me. That's true significance. That's true greatness. She had to grow personally, get out of her comfort zone. And what made her do it? She said she chose to make a difference in someone else's life. True significance will always require personal growth. Personal growth has to be intentional, and it will only be the way to ensure that you'll make a difference tomorrow is by growing yourself today. The best time and place to grow and the best environment for personal growth is the circumstances we find ourselves in right now. We don't need to wait on anyone, and we don't need to wait on anything. We have to choose to grow, and growth comes as we step out of our comfort zone. We choose growth over comfort. I was faced with this back in 2016 as I was leading those two organizations. The organization I founded to pastor pastors was really where I was gaining my greatest significance. But my comfort zone was in leading my local church. And I believed it was where I gained my credibility. But it was limiting my time with pastors. If I was going to pursue significance, I'd have to make a choice. And I want to tell you, it was intimidating, threatening. What would I do? What would be my credibility if I left my church? Would anyone even want to listen to me anymore? But I had to make the choice to choose significance over success. I'd have to face my fear. I'd have to leave my comfort zone. And it took me several months, but I made the decision to turn that church over to another leader. Do you know this immediately gave me more time to spend with pastors? Since then, I've been busier than ever, worked harder, gained more influence, been given greater opportunities to impact more people, and actually have made more money than in any other time in my life. The pursuit of significance means we have to face our fears. Fear will limit our potential. It'll restrict our ability to impact others. Fear will become a self-fulfilling forecast of our future. And growth takes place outside our comfort zone. You'll always be unsure when you're stepping out of your comfort zone. But the only way to get to where you want to go is to leave where you are. And you're never going to be ready to take the next step, which means growth demands the temporary surrender of our security. Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, said this. He said, I found that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And many others have said it in many different ways, and it's true. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to act in spite of fear. It's the ability to act in the very presence of fear. Now I want you to understand. I believe we are all born for a purpose. We are born to solve problems. Problems are another way to pursue significance in your life. If you will identify the problem and refuse to make it worse. See, anybody can point out a problem, but someone pursuing significance wants to find ways to solve problems. Our country has had a problem for years, many years, and it's hurting the influence of the local church in the United States. Waiters and waitresses, servers in restaurants do not want to work on Sundays. They don't want to work on Sundays because they say church attenders are the customers who complain the most, give the least gratuity, and almost never show appreciation. Well, I've chosen to try to solve this problem and make a difference in two ways. First, by being the exception. Then, secondly, by starting a movement of people who will listen to my message, learn the principle of making a difference, and then live out a life of significance. Gandhi said, "We must be the change we wish to see in the world." So here's what I've started doing. When I eat at an establishment, I always begin by asking my server's name. And then I call them by their name every time they come to my table. You see, calling a person by their name shows that you value them. And you know how it feels to be valued, and we all know how it feels to be devalued. See, people will not always remember what you do for them, but they will remember how you made them feel. So I thank them each time they take my order, bring something to the table, or fill my glass. I smile. I ask them questions about themselves. And if I know the meaning of their name, and with technology today it's not hard to find, I tell them the meaning of their name and how significant it is to their life. Many times they'll cry. They'll always express great gratitude. And I'll never forget one man who said, "I can't wait to get home and tell my sons what my name means." See, when they bring me the bill at the end of the meal, I ask them to please bring their manager back with them. Now, this always causes a little stress because usually that means there's a problem, a complaint. And it confuses my server because I've been thanking them and bragging on their service the whole meal. Well, when the manager arrives, they usually start off by asking, "What is the problem?" And I always apologize for taking their time. And then I begin to tell them what an asset the server is to their organization and establishment. How excellent their service was, how they went above and beyond the call of duty, and how it makes me want to return for another visit. As the manager begins thanking me, and they usually say something like, "We only get the problems and the complaints. Thank you for the compliments." I then look at the manager and I say something like this. Now, I'm a leader, and being a leader myself, I understand everything rises and falls on leadership. And that means that this service is just a reflection of your leadership. The joy on their faces, the feeling I have as I'm leaving, is worth the extra effort of simply choosing to make a difference. Now, I want to return to my opening thought. I call it living with the end in mind. Others, they simply call it legacy. How do you want to be remembered? What do you want people to say at your funeral? Now, this is an odd question, but it may very well be the most important question you could ever ask yourself if you want to pursue true significance. And most people never consider it. What stories do you want told about you after you're gone? Or, as a grandfather, I've started asking myself, what stories do I want to tell my grandchildren? And if you want to live a life of meaning and make a difference long after you're gone, then you need to seriously consider this question. But I want to tell you now, it takes discipline to live it out every day. The determination to be very intentional about the significance of your life. It's important because it'll help you focus on others and not on yourself. It'll encourage you to make whatever sacrifices you need to make that will determine the legacy you will leave behind after you're gone. And everybody is going to leave some kind of legacy. So we have to be proactive instead of passive. Let me give you another example from my life. Last November, I wanted to spend a week at Thanksgiving with my two grandsons. They're 5 years old and 3 years old. I wanted to have a lot of fun, but I also wanted to make a difference and make memories with them. So the month prior, I started thinking creatively. What can I do with two very active young boys? So I found some books that we always read at Christmas to my children as we were raising them. I took 4 of those books, and every other day I would read a story at story time to my two grandsons. Then I would write a message in one of the books and sign it to one of my grandsons. One day I gave them both a hat from Cameroon, while I told them all my stories about my times in Cameroon and my experiences. Another day we played a game called Superpower Socks. You see, I travel overseas on airlines all the time, and they give me socks for the flight. I never use them, but I do keep them. So I gave each one of them a pair of those socks, and I told them, you get to choose one imaginary superpower. And then we'd start wrestling and fighting and playing games. And all they had to do if I began to win was yell out their imaginary superpower, and I had to surrender and start all over again. There were several more games we played and things we did. I had purchased shirts with their names on them and gave them to them and took pictures. I'd even gotten them shirts in Medan, Indonesia. And when I gave them to them, I told them stories about my travels in Indonesia. Beginning the first day I was with them, I started keeping a journal of everything we did all week long. And on my last day, I wrote a poem, read it, and recorded it with music behind it. And the end of the day, we listened to it again, relived all of those moments, and then I left it with them where they get to listen to it, and every now and then they'll call me and we'll talk about those memories again. See, that's intentional. That's legacy. That's significance. No man is a failure who spends his life making a difference in the lives of others. And in the end, our significance will be judged according to our legacy. Legacies are not left by accident. It's by choice, not by chance. So today I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to die empty and to leave everything you are and everything you will become in the lives of others who will carry on your legacy. Use what you have now. Do it now. Don't wait. Forget the past. Focus on the future. No matter whether you're 8 or 18, 48 or 80, your potential lies in front of you. So live every day with importance, with the importance of that question. Be intentional in your relentless pursuit of greatness. Choose daily to live for others instead of for yourself. Make whatever necessary sacrifices you have to make to keep growing personally. Face your fears. And I promise you, eventually, you'll discover the satisfaction and the success of a life lived in pursuit of true significance. Your time has been valuable. I'm honored that you've given it to me today. I want to thank you for allowing me this tremendous opportunity to share these principles with you today. God bless you. That's it.